Okay. Good evening. I call to order the meeting of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee at 7:01 p.m. and I invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. Amy, would you be willing to read that?
Sure. The Hamilton Wenham Regional School District would like to acknowledge the Massachusetts Tribe, the tribe of indigenous people from whom the colony, province, and Commonwealth of Massachusetts have taken their name. We would like to pay our respect to the ancestral bloodline of the Massachusetts tribe and their descendants who still inhabit historical Massachusetts tribe territories to this day.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and also being live streamed on HWCam on YouTube. I am, next up is citizens' comments.
Yep.
Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Nope.
Okay. The opportunity for citizens' comments, I can go through my spiel. Is anyone in the room interested in making a citizen comment?
I think we're good.
Okay. In that case, I'm not going to go through my whole spiel about citizens' comments, okay? All right, and it looks like there is no one on Zoom at this time
Nope.
wishing to offer a
Shut it
comment.
down.
Okay. In that case, we will close citizens' comments at 7:03. Next up, oh, you know what? I think, Mr. Tracy, thank you, you're way ahead of me. I did not actually print out the mission statement. So I may, maybe I'll just, since I didn't ask anyone, maybe I'll take it on myself and read a portion of the mission statement. The Hamilton Wenham Regional School District School Committee's mission is to ensure our schools create graduates with a passion for lifelong learning together with critical skills needed to maximize their potential. The Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee will lead and inspire a district that attracts and retains high-quality educators by acknowledging and respecting their expertise and professionalism. Just for those of you who don't know, we usually read a portion of our mission statement at the beginning of each meeting. Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items that they would like to hold from the consent agenda? Go ahead. Yes?
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional...
Oh, wait, hold on. I thought you had something to hold. Oh, I do. I have something to hold. I want to hold the minutes from October 24th.
Anything
Sorry.
else?
Yep, go ahead.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee approve the consent agenda as written minus the minutes from October 24th.
Second.
Seconded by Amy Kumberger. All those in favor? That is unanimous of the 5 members present, and the motion passes. I held the minutes from October 24th. I had 2 minor comments or concerns. One is that up at the top where it says who is present, it says that Jen Carr departed at approximately 7:20. I actually, according to my notes, she actually departed at 8:20.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then the other one is that on that same list at the top, David Polito's name is spelled incorrectly. It's a typo.
You would think I would have picked that.
So, I've had that happen to me where mine is spelled incorrectly and someone else noticed it. Are you willing to make does anyone have anything else on these? David, are you willing to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee approve the October 24th, 2024 minutes with the edits brought up by Dana Lara.
Second.
Second by Amy Kumberger. Is there any discussion? All right, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous of the 5 members present, and the motion passes. Okay. I do wanted to just acknowledge all the really nice donations that were on there. Exciting stuff for the robotics team.
For sure, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, it looks like we have a presentation from our DECA students.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Cirillo, and I'm one of the 5 DECA officers at our high school. To my left, I have my fellow officers, Gavin Meyer, Jonas Dorigo, Patrick G., and Gabriella Jewett. Not only do we just have our DECA officer team, we also have our DECA ambassador team. Ambassadors meet monthly with Miss Wheeler to work closely with her, while officers meet weekly with her to work together.
So what exactly is DECA? DECA at its core is a student organization to develop transferable skills for colleges and careers. Some of these skills include simple things like eye contact and learning how to speak professionally, to pitching business members and presenting your ideas. DECA allows you to try job scenarios and competition, build skills through workshops, events, communication, and leadership. DECA was formerly known as the Distributive Education Clubs of America, but is now simply known as DECA, and over 200,000 high school DECA students worldwide, including all 50 United States, 4 U.S. territories, Canada, China, and more.
So what DECA looks like at our school is over 50% of high school students at our school participate in DECA. It's the biggest club at our school. We have 252 members this year, 164 returning and 88 new members. We try to be very interactive with DECA at our school, and we try to get people involved in as many ways as possible. And through that, a thing we incorporated last year was new member orientation. And with that, we've really emphasized the learning and teaching of the new members and making them succeed better. And through that, we've seen a huge jump in their success, and we've seen, we had 25 freshmen from last year make it to state competition, which we hadn't seen in years before, and that's one of our main points of emphasis this year. And then additionally, we have a bunch of other ways to get involved, including competition prep, stock market and virtual business challenge, the quiz bowl, and then we also have active fundraisers like turkeygrams and bingo night. And through that, it's a way to get interactive with the community as well as raise money. And then we also have the speaker series where we invite business professionals from local businesses as well as just people known throughout town. And it's a good way to learn more about careers and different business paths.
So as part of our DECA family, we have mentor teams, and each mentor team consists of 1 DECA officer and around 2 to 3 DECA ambassadors. Each year we have a theme for the group names. This year's theme is Business Innovators, and those are our 5 groups down there. And each officer, we drafted every single member from DECA onto our team. And these teams help new members get acclimated to what DECA is like. They learn about competition and other opportunities. It creates communication channels between members and us officers and Ms. Wheeler, and it also helps build relationships and develop a family dynamic within DECA at our school.
Now moving on to the core DECA experience. This mostly incorporates the district competition and role plays, where we have over 50 categories that most students can pick from when they're in the club. So before the actual competition, they take a test that is full of 100 difficult questions. And then afterwards, they go on the field trip and they do a role play. This includes getting a slip of paper where they learn about the problem they have to solve. And then after 10 or 20 minutes of planning, they'll go to a judge and they'll explain their ideas for how to solve this business problem. And this is really helpful for our futures if we try do this in the competition, because if we have interviews later on, we'll be used to the stress that we might feel beforehand. We'll be able to publicly speak better, and we'll also have an idea of how to problem solve very quickly on our feet.
So a big piece of the DEG experience, and especially the competition, is choosing a category. So for especially new members, each student will meet with Ms. Wheeler individually, in which they will discuss what the student likes, what categories they might think would be a good fit, or and what they might want to pursue. And out of the 50 categories, there's a lot of different fields like marketing, finance, hospitality, entrepreneurship, and business management. And based off this conference with Ms. Wheeler, and then eventually once the student picks a category and they finalize it with Ms. Wheeler, she creates a personalized competition plan for each student, which includes prep materials, tips, tricks, and a practice schedule that will help them succeed come competition time.
Our competition. So there are 3 main stages of DECA within competition. There's districts, states, and ICDC, which is the national conference. Districts is held in December 11th to 12th in the Doubletree in Danvers. And states is February 27th to March 1st in Boston in the Seaport District. And ICDC is in Orlando, Florida from April 25th to the 30th. A majority of students participate in what's called a role play. So it's like a face-to-face presentation with a judge. You can be in partners or solo. And it's like you're put in a real world situation and you have to solve a problem or present a business idea to them. But DECA isn't limited to role plays. There are also a written project aspect where you can prepare something beforehand. And with that, there's a written portion as well as a presentation with the judge, only it's prepared beforehand. And with that, our school is partnered with many different organizations, some of which include Accord, 4Ocean, Newhouse, Institution for Savings, and the Doggy Depot.
So, DECA in action. This year, me, Caroline, and Jonas have decided to do a business growth plan project. We have created a company, and our goal is to create a 5-year plan as well as get that company up and running. So our idea is Mass Comfort. Mass Comfort acts as a bridge between a local business and apparel producer to make the process of developing merchandise stress-free. We want to work with local businesses, and our focus is in the community of Hamilton-Wenham. We also pledge to reinvest 50% of the profits we make back into the town. So far for progress, we've acquired our business permits, and we're beginning to launch our business. The next steps for us, we will be attending the Difference Maker Conference on November 19th at UMass Lowell to get feedback from experts and practice presenting our pitch. After that comes the district, state, and hopefully ICDC conference, where we're hoping to win glass. And finally, to bring us back to the business, our goal is to form 3 community partnerships with local businesses in town by the end of this school year.
Another group that we have affiliated with DECA is the Social Squad that includes Patrick G. and I, and plus 2 other members, Cameron and Emily McIntosh. In the Social Squad, we have a block during the school day where we can go around the school and figure out what's going on at Hamilton-Wenham High School. When we do this, we try to take pictures of everything that's happening around the school so that we can post it on our Hamilton-Wenham Instagram and Facebook so that more of the community can understand what we have going on. We're hoping that through this, we can kind of gather more students from the community to the high school, since we have lost some students in the past years. So through this, we experiment with different ways of how to post, so depending on how many people we should have in a post, or just if we should do infographics more or not. Down there on the slide, you'll also see that is our most engaging post that we've posted this year. And Patrick G. and Emily McIntosh are also working on a project to compete during the district conference and hopefully state and national conference as well, if Patrick wants to come up and talk a little more about that.
So our project is we take a business and then analyze a problem that business has, and we present a solution plan and then implement that plan and show what results we can achieve. And our business that we chose is the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School because we know that the school has declined in student body over the past quite a few years. And for this project, so far, we have been analyzing student body count trends since, I think, 1985. And we've been explaining the social squad team that we have, and we talk about how we're using this team to essentially create a more engaging environment for the community. So we hope that we can spread the word or spread knowledge of all the amazing opportunities that our school has, and just like the general community spirit. And so this will help show people in the community that the high school is a school that they should be sending their children to.
So why is DECA so important for our students? As Ms. Wheeler always likes to tell us, DECA is you can't be bad at gaining experience. DECA is more than just learning and developing transferable business skills. It's about building self-esteem, experiencing leadership opportunities, and practicing community service. I personally joined DECA because I was interested in learning more about the different fields in business and seeing if I would be interested in doing that in my future. What I didn't realize when I was joining a club is that I was gonna have such a fun experience meeting new people and figuring out other ideas that I didn't know.
A little bit about my DECA experience. So I first joined DECA with a bunch of my friends. I thought it would be fun, and everyone at the school was doing it. And I was lucky enough to, with my partner Jonas, we were lucky enough to make the state conference that year. And after that, I just kind of knew like I had found my footing at the school, and like this is kind of where I belonged. And DECA gives you the opportunity to really pursue that and take on leadership roles and do things like this. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for the club.
Last year, the five of us also got to travel to the international conference in Anaheim, California, and I would say it was probably the best trip we've been on. We had so much fun all together, just meeting new people. We met people internationally and just within different states, and we also got to go to Disney as a plus. But DECA really is so important to all of us, and we thank you so much for taking your time to listen to us.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm always just so impressed by this group. I think that it's amazing. You all do such a good job, and I really appreciate you coming to tell us about all the things that you do. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to just say the same. I learned, I've seen DECA presentations before, and I learned a lot tonight. I wrote a bunch of things down. It's amazing the wide variety of things you do. I think you made it really, really understandable to us how 50% of the school can be involved, because there's so many different things that you are doing that I can see that there's a lot of opportunities for different students. That was really helpful. Wonderful. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, no, it's just great hearing some of the personal projects you guys do. Excuse me, year after year. We love having you guys in, but we just sort of hear about the program a lot. So really seeing what you guys are personally working on is pretty exciting. So love to get that data on the attrition rates.
Yeah, definitely. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Can we
you.
give them a round of applause?
Yeah.
Nice job.
Thank you.
And thank you to Ms. Wheeler for continuing to grow our DECA program.
Thank you.
Awesome work.
On the
Thank you.
50% mark.
That's amazing.
Okay. All right. Oh, and I actually meant to mention that we did approve those 2 field trips today on the agenda. So, which is, yeah,
It's a good time.
nice work.
Microphone is so big.
It's a tough act to follow.
It is. They are an impressive group.
Very impressive.
Very impressive.
Tonight, we're going to go through our district MCAS presentation that we do annually. This is kind of an overview of the scores across the district. Start out initially, I'll do a little bit of an overview of some of the statewide results so you can have something to compare it to. And then each of the principals will do the results in each of the buildings. Then we'll take questions at the end. We have one principal who does have to leave right after our presentation, but we can manage her questions for her if you have some. So initially, the statewide results across the state show lower achievement in all grades from 2023, that last school year, 23-24 school year. The math results, however, do show improvement in the third grade, and then the rest of the math is fairly flat, plus or minus 1%, not a lot of huge achievements, improvements. And then science has also improved achievement in 5 and 10 grades. And for some reason in 8th grade, it took a dip this year, which it has not done in the past. So a little bit of an overview of the statewide results. This will give you a look at statewide results comparing 2019 to 2023. We're still approximately 2 and 3 and 4 points behind statewide, not just, this is not school data, this is statewide data from the 23-24 testing results. And this is for ELA. So you'll see from grades 3 through 7 still have not kind of caught back up, if you will. Grade 8 is what the state considers flat. Negative or positive 1 is considered flat in that realm. And then grade 3s through 8 as a combination is down approximately 3 percentage points in the meeting or exceeding. And grade 10 is, again, flat in the 23 scores.
Eric,
Math.
sorry, could you give me a primer on the acronyms on the top?
Sure. If you look from the left to the right column, it's percent not meeting, partially meeting, meeting expectations, exceeding expectations, and then they combine meeting or exceeding, so M or E. Sorry, it's one of those assumptions we all make, right? Everybody knows. So not meeting, partially meeting, meeting, and then exceeding. And then what you'll see a lot of the state scores are meeting and exceeding is where they group kids to try to say, okay, this is our target to get kids into this group. And again, as you look at this chart, statewide math results, grade 3 had a bump of 3 percentage points, which means 3% of the kids across the state moved up to the meeting or exceeding categories. And then the rest is relatively flat. In a presentation that was done by the state, they had said that anything within plus or minus 1 or 0 was to them flat comparatively across years, because they are comparing kids kind of unusually. They're comparing third grade of last year to third grade of the previous year to third grade in 2019. So when you start to see these numbers, it's a bit of an anomaly how that comparative happens. And I've said this in the past, when you look at the data in that way, and I think we would all probably agree, you're comparing oranges, apples, and grapes. Each year you have different groups of kids, you have different types of kids coming through the system, and it's a direct comparison. We also like to look at it in the cohort style, so looking at a 4th grader and saying how did they do versus their 3rd grade score is more meaningful for us, for that child, when you're looking at growth and achievement. And then science, it's kind of a little bit all over the map. Science across the state. In the grade 5, big jump this past year. Grade 8 was what I had mentioned earlier, had gone down 2 percentage points, and then 5 through 8 as a whole was roughly flat in the words of the state, and then grade 10 is 2 percentage points, which means 2% of the students in grade 10 have made it into that meeting or exceeding threshold. Across our district in grades 3 through 8, 62% of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA. In grades 3 through 8, 57% of students are meeting or exceeding expectations in math. And in grades 5 and 8, 65% are meeting or exceeding expectations in science. And those are some of the comparison groups that they use at the state level, the 3 through 8 and the 5 and the 8. to make comparisons, so we try to track that as well across the district. And now I'll shift into each of the school scores, and we'll start with Bucher. Mr. Schurston?
Am I driving from up here?
You can drive, yeah.
Okay.
And hold those there.
Sure. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Schurston. I'm the principal here at Bucher Elementary. We're going to start with an overview at the school level, look at the 3 tests, and then talk about our plan moving forward, and it will be that similar format for the 5 schools. So looking at broadly what's happening 3 through 5, science is looking good, strong scores and pulling away from the state average. Similar scores in math, again pulling away from the state, which is good to see. ELA was not as strong, and I want to go into a little deeper story there about what's going on. Eric talked about cohorts, about following those kids who were 3rd grade 2 years ago to 4th grade last year and 4th grade 2 years ago to 5th grade. In those ELA cohorts, looking at those, there was a slight dip. Looking at those cohorts across the state, there was a matching dip. With math, looking at those cohorts, both of those cohorts increased in proficiency, which was great. At the state level, one of those groups increased and one of them decreased. But nice to see those increases with those cohorts where we're following the same set of kids from year to year. So looking a little deeper. On the left side is averages for all students at Bucher, and on the right side is for students with disabilities. The steady, slow drop is the piece that jumps out at me, as I'm sure it does for you. The part that isn't in the story is that we had 15 kids in ELA who scored a 497, 498, and 499. So 15 kids, that's 13%, who were within 2 questions of meeting the standard. So many such that when Zach at the middle school was putting in his MCAS course, he reached out to say, holy cow, how is it you have this many kids who are this close? And I was like, right, I know. And that's the part that the graph doesn't show. And they're just right there. There is a drop in scores with our students with disabilities. My first reaction was, what's going on here? One of the things I try to think about is that with these small schools, we start to get into really, really small cohorts. And going from year to year, all those 5th graders leave and some new 3rd graders come in. That cohort is about 20 kids, and 1/3 of them change every year.
What does the circle with the X's mean?
I'm getting there.
Thank you.
So there is some moving around in terms of what those kids are actually looking at. So the dotted line is the state average. We move over to students with disabilities. The dotted line is the state average for all students, not the state average for students with disabilities. If you go in and crunch the numbers, the red dots are the state averages for students with disabilities. So if we're going to compare apples to apples, it's our solid line and the 3 red dots at the bottom. Slight increases in the gap between us and the state in 2024, and really nice to see a greater than 50% growth percentile for the students with disabilities. Math is looking good. All 3 individual grades had increases, so not just the group as a whole. One of our school goals from last year was around math fact fluency, and I want to believe that has something to do with that. We had a lot of conversations about that with teachers last year. Both cohorts went up, so those 3rd graders going to 4th and 4th going to 5th. For students with disabilities, again, we're talking about a cohort of about 20 kids. And nice to see us pulling away from where that state average is, so doing some nice movement there. Nice that their growth, the students with disabilities, higher than the 50th percentile. I would love to see it a little higher than the students without disabilities, so they were closing that gap, but nice to see us above that state average for growth. On the science side, science is changing. We're in the middle of this change. I just want to give you a little sense of kind of where things are going. In the past, we've had this traditional science test. The vast majority of it is multiple choice. The moon question is around if I took some pictures over the course of a week, which series of moons is it? I won't ask you to try and answer it for me. What we're moving on to is more kids performing experiments and drawing conclusions as part of the exercise. So this piece on the left is around erosion and asking kids to look at what kind of barriers in which positions will prevent the most erosion. The other piece, the other side is an ecosystems experiment where they look at 2 different locations, looking at the number of sunny days during a month, and then thinking about how that affects fish and insect population and the energy available for top predators. So a very, very different kind of test. Kids are really conducting experiments, they're drawing those conclusions, and really talking about those results. So we started into that field testing this year. It's rolling out, should be rolling out to everybody this coming year. But as we sort of think about science and where we're going with that this test is about to change very dramatically. On the science side, love it, yeah. Steady climb. To be fair, this is just the 5th graders, but I do like to remind everybody that everybody's kids are everybody's kids. And so when those 5th graders do science, it's not just that 5th grade experience, it's everybody all the way through. And true for 3rd and 4th for their tests as well. That really, it's not just what's happening in that grade, it's all of the years that led into that. The swings on the right-hand side, we're now talking 2 classes and kids with disabilities. That cohort is either side of 10 and is a number that the state doesn't actually report on because the cohort size is so small. This is an internal graph. So those wild swings are there because there are some cohorts in there that are 2 kids. And so that swings that a lot. So what do we do with all of this? One of the big things is writing. If we look at our ELA scores, the place where we lose those points is on writing, is on essays. We're in our 3rd year with CKLA. It has a lot of writing of paragraphs, a lot of organizing ideas, but less writing those fully produced pieces of writing, and no real on-demand writing where you are writing stuff from the beginning to the end all in one sitting. We are adding a research unit as a writing unit in with the 4th grade. The lower grades are looking at ways to add writing into their curriculum. We're really looking about those essay points. For ID development, we end up with about 40% of the possible points. Essay conventions are about 50%. Interesting about the conventions is that when we get multiple choice questions about conventions, we do really well on those. But when we look at conventions in the actual written piece and actually have those applied, that's where we fall a little bit short. We're looking at some writing professional development for coaches and for administrators, so we can support more there. We did a lot of work with Science of Reading in the last few years, and now really thinking about understanding more about how kids learn writing and what the latest research on that is so that we can get the best bang for our buck there. Continuing with mathematical fluency, I am really excited as a math person about how Eureka Squared deals with fluency. It's a little bit that's brought in every day. It's part of that daily practice. We've historically had some issues with fractions on MCAS as well. That was not any different this year. And Eureka Squared has some really unique ways of talking about unit fractions and working those into number lines and really building that number sense of what fractions actually mean. So that's exciting for me. And then thinking about those students with disabilities, we have moved to some co-teaching models in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, where we have special educators who are doing teaching and supporting of students directly in the classroom. Traditionally, it's been a pull-out model where special education teachers pull those students out and do those tutorials with them in a separate space, and then it is our ESPs or our TAs who do the supporting in the classroom. So in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we have opportunities for those special education teachers to actually be in the classroom supporting those kids. What's not on here, just because our population is so small, is our EL population. Looking at our internal DIBEL scores, our EL students are doing fantastic. Our EL teacher, our literacy ESPs, our classroom teachers are doing a great job with them, and it's really exciting to see their language develop both verbally, but also within reading and writing. But so, thinking about MCAS in general, really excited about some of what's on there, have some mixed feelings about literacy, but we know where kids are struggling, and we have a plan to support them this year.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Hunt, the new principal at the Cutler Elementary School. Oh, thank you. Yep. So much like Ben, I'm just going to kind of go over our scores, have some explanations around sort of thoughts as to why our scores are at certain levels and not. And I do have at the end an overview of a plan to kind of help to better our instruction at Cutler around the subjects of ELA and math in particular. So just kind of looking back through our MCAS scores, here are the overview of the highlights. Our absenteeism has improved overall by 4%. Right now we've exceeded our targets. Students with disabilities, so we have a language-based program, and we also have a moderate disability special education program, and we now have a new therapeutic learning center. But our students with disabilities showed good percentage growth overall in all grades 3 through 5, all content areas, ELA and math, so up from the previous year. Our grade 3 ELA overall growth up 11% from the previous year, and grade 4 math overall growth up 8% from the previous year. What you're going to see on the next slide is going to actually speak more to when I start to talk about our MCAS scores. And what we kind of uncovered was happening and has been happening at the Cutler Elementary School for a couple of years. So one thing is digital learning and technology, what usage was not encouraged under the previous leadership. So children did not have opportunities to have devices in their hands from a young age. So, you know, by the time they got up to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they didn't have experience using certain digital tools. And therefore there was this MCAS is all digital, so there was a deficit there in terms of utilizing the tools, in particular in math. The math MCAS test has a lot of different tools that you need to use, like highlighters and drop-down menus. So part of what we're thinking the scores, why they didn't do as well as the district had expected or hoped, is directly related to this. And also, students in grades 3 and 4, 3 through 5 were not given time really to practice the practice tests on Chromebooks. So it appears they didn't seem to understand, again, how to use online testing tools. And when we look through student rosters and item analysis summaries, and we can really break down those specific questions and looking at the scores and seeing, you know, what the full amount of points you should be able to get, we saw a lot of zeros and a lot of ones. So that's kind of when you get to the next slide, you'll see what's been happening. Parts of the literacy and the math curriculum, so it was a new literacy
Excuse me, we have a
curriculum.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What do you mean by we're not being taught with integrity?
So there were a lot of inconsistencies. There was in terms of like Tier 1 instruction and Tier 2 intervention, certain things didn't get up and running as early as they should have. I don't know why. They're just, I've looked back. Yeah, I know. I know. It's just, you know, when we look back and we look at data and we look at like sort of like the 3-year data assessments, and where, you know, at the first beginning of the year assessments, there wasn't data even put into some of the charts. Go ahead.
But are you talking about our special ed kids?
No.
Or was this overall?
It's not our special ed kids. It was more overall, yeah. It was a new coach, a lot of new staff members, a lot of trying to keep up with certain pacing guides and scope and sequences in CKLA, and then also in the math curriculum. So they were using investigations, and then in the spring piloted 2 other separate math curriculum, Eureka Math Squared and Illustrative Math, which kind of interrupted and disrupted that integrity component of continuing to teach, in particular the math curriculum, because you'll see it's our math scores that really suffered more than anything. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you feel like there's a plan to improve this? Do you feel like it's in a better
We've
path?
already started it.
Great.
We got it. We're already seeing growth and benefits from it. So here's ELA all grades 3 through 5. And as you can see, if you're looking at those graphs, how it has really dipped down pretty dramatically. You know, we went down 8% in the previous year, 4% average scaled score, student growth performance down pretty drastically, both 10%, the previous year, and then we're lower than the state average. And we're lower than the state average in a lot of areas. We're lower than the district average in a lot of areas, but there are some small glimmers of hope where we actually were above both. So, and I can talk more about that if you'd like. Students with disabilities actually did go up. If you look at the student growth performance percentage, they went up 9.6 from the previous year. So that's very promising, and that's really important, especially since we house a variety of different special education programs. Math is where we're really some concerning scores and dips in the achievement and the growth. So again, you know, down 8% over the previous year. We're 3% less than the state average. We would hope that our students meeting and exceeding expectations would be higher than a 40% number, but again, like I said in my previous slide, there are reasons that we're sort of uncovering that explain a lot of this, so it's not necessarily that our students aren't capable, because they are very capable of exceeding. Students with disabilities, again, you can see that we've gone up from the previous year in the scaled score and also the student growth performance. Science, we didn't do as well as some of the other schools. I'm still learning about this. We have a couple of different science curriculum that we use, mystery science and STEM scope, so still kind of figure out where teachers are teaching science, fitting it into their day. The majority of the day is focused obviously on ELL and math, especially since we're looking at scores that we are seeking to improve. So what we started to do moving forward is students are now from kindergarten through 5th grade with our library media teachers, Linda Mastriani, who is our library director of library and technology in the elementary schools, has been working very closely with all teachers, getting into classrooms. Kids are getting on Chromebooks. Kindergartners are using their iPads. I was in the library this week watching the kids, you know, have fun kind of playing around and learning about the tools on a very basic level. So one of my goals this year is to really work closely with Linda and making sure that we are giving students ample opportunities to, you know, learn on the digital learning platforms, to have experience with the devices. She's working really closely with 3rd grade right now, making sure that they have opportunities on Chromebooks, because they didn't have as many. So by the time they got to the MCAS test, they didn't have a familiarity with how to use even the basics of the Chromebooks. We're working again with Linda to make sure that we're giving kids 3 through 5 opportunities to practice using the Chromebooks and the MCAS practice tests. We have really met very closely with my instructional coach, myself, in our PLC meetings and our data meetings. PLC meetings are on Wednesdays, but we also make time in our schedule to meet with grade level specifically. We met with 3rd, 4th, and 5th a couple of times last week and really delved down deep into the item analysis section of MCAS, and we were able to actually look exactly at what was the standard, what was the question. We're going to look at maybe giving opportunities for, you know, kids to sort of practice with sample questions from that item analysis summary. And that's what this is. Yeah, we looked really closely at the MCAS rosters. We looked at who specifically wasn't meeting expectations. And then we took those students and we looked at all the items that they didn't perform so well on, and really started to understand that a lot of it was in math. And we realized that with what's happening now with Eureka Math Squared, down here, the new math curriculum, it is already teaching a lot of those standards and math concepts that were missed on those item analysis tests. So we're already seeing growth, leaps and bounds in kids' math academic performance and assessments. Again, and Eureka Math also has digital assessments, online digital assessments that mirrors the MCAS assessment. So again, that practice using those tools is, I think, going to be really beneficial. We're going to continue emphasis on the CKLA curriculum. I myself have gone to training. We do have a grant that Jen Clifford wrote that is going to give us coaches to kind of continue with that implementation through CKLA as well as Eureka Math Squared. And we are looking at, not just Tier 1 instruction, but Tier 2 instruction in our WIN blocks, where we can really look at the kids who might not be meeting benchmark standards at this point, and taking time to really focus in on intervention during those WIN times. Nope. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Thank you for that presentation. The digital tools that have been made available, are those tools that are already available to the other schools and
Yes.
and weren't available at Cutler?
They were available.
They were. They just were being not utilized?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean, Typing Club, for one, right there. When we looked at the literacy, the ELA item analysis, we saw that a lot of the errors came around the fact that the children hadn't had experiences typing. So they weren't able to do, the shift key to make the capital letter. They weren't doing necessarily the punctuation marks. We looked at a lot of the open response questions to see, where we can support with that as well. So it's pretty global that we're looking at all of this, but we are meeting on a regular basis. We are in classrooms. We are supporting teachers, providing them with resources, materials, and we are already seeing progress, and I think people are already starting to feel good about it. So I do think it's going to take time, but I do feel strongly that we will improve our scores and improve our progress overall. Sure.
First, I want to thank Ms. Hunt for jumping into the pile here. This is probably, you're a new principal, and this is a surprise. But I think it's important to know that the tools related to even MCAS were not known by a lot of these kids. So when you look back at their grades, there are a lot of blanks, which kind of tells us they didn't know what to do. So when you go into some of these math problems, you have to go up and pull down a tool, or you have to reach and bring something down. And if you don't know that, if you've never experienced that as a third grader, it makes it really difficult. So we had learned that there was a dearth of technology use in that building during the previous year. There was some push to try to get some technology use. It didn't happen as it should have, and I think that's one of the things that we've been able to quickly recover in and get kids the opportunities to be on the Chromebooks and teach them about typing skills, but also teach them about the skills. The state gives us sample test questions so that kids can learn the tools. These kids just, in our opinion, didn't have the opportunity. So.
Was it a hardware issue? Did we just not have enough Chromebooks?
We have enough Chromebooks. We have enough Chromebooks, we have enough iPads. We had the staff, we had a library media teacher, so, yeah.
Making sure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy, if anyone else has other questions, I'm happy to answer. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Shediak. I'm the principal of the Winthrop School. And a lot of what I could possibly tell you, Ben and Jenny have covered, because there are some district-wide elementary situations that we've seen in all three schools, and we've collaborated quite a bit on what we can do to improve our scores for next year. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that have occurred at Winthrop. And so some of our highlights are that we were above state averages in ELA with our scores following the state trend lines. We, of course, want to be above the state averages, and so I would like to see us be, higher above the state averages. But for now, we are where we are. The state averages in math, we are still above the state averages, but there was a slight drop in scores in 2024. Grade 5 was kind of a shining star at Winthrop across the board in all three areas, and they showed really strong achievement in grade 5 science. including students with disabilities. It was one of the areas where our students with disabilities actually performed pretty well. So that was exciting to see. We also met our target for chronic absenteeism in our lowest performing student subgroup. We got 3 out of 4 points for all students. So we're doing a good job in addressing chronic absenteeism. Some of the things that impacted our scores were we had a number of students, as I'm talking about absenteeism, we had a couple of kids who were absent like in the 2 weeks following up to MCAS when we're doing the MCAS practice and getting kids' heads in the game. And then the other thing, and Jenny mentioned it a little bit about the technology, the impact of technology on the scores, is that last year at Winthrop, we had very inconsistent staffing in our library tech. We had the teaching assistants last year, but we went through a cycle of about 4 people. They would come, they would stay for a little while, and they would quit. Then I'd get somebody new, and I'd get somebody new. So there was really inconsistent library tech teaching. So the level of practice in the library tech model was not great, and I think it definitely impacts kids' access and comfort level with using the Chromebooks when they're ready to take the test. Some of that impact definitely showed in typing skills. Essays were across the district, so we can say some of it has to do with teaching kids how to write essays, but the other part was typing. And so some kids had a low capacity for being able to type a lot, and then they just wanted to be done. So that was one of the areas where we are looking at how to improve those scores. In ELA, there were 20 students in grades 3 to 5 who were just below that meeting, as Ben said. They were within 10 points of meeting. In math, we really continued to prioritize literacy intervention during our intervention and enrichment blocks. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity outside of the math instruction to go back and do a lot of remediation for students who had to fill some gaps. So that is something that we're addressing this year, and I'll talk about that later on. The other thing that impacted some of our scores was the pacing and sequence of topics in our previous math program investigations. In 4th grade, fractions is not taught until after MCAS, so the teachers did a little primer of it, but they didn't go deep into it. So that is definitely something that also is going to be addressed through our new math program, Eureka Math Squared. And in math, I had 30 students who were just below meeting. So those are the kids that we're really going to continue to work on getting them up over that meeting, as well as, bringing all the kids who were lower, improving their scores also. So here's Winthrop's scores, and you can't see the number, but 57% of our students were meeting and exceeding in grades 3 to 5. And Ben mentioned cohorts of kids and how different groups of kids are very different groups of kids. And we have a group of 3rd graders who came in to 3rd grade with some challenges, and we also have, at Winthrop School, we've got the Castle program, which is a sub-separate program, and there was a larger cohort of 3rd graders in Castle than we've ever had before, so that's definitely going to impact our scores when we're talking about 15 students with disabilities, and 4 of them are in a sub-separate program. It's going to definitely impact the scores. So you can see we're still above state averages, and as Ben mentioned, the little X is the state average for students with disabilities. So we were still just a little bit above it, but I definitely would like to see those scores improve. In math, similar lines. We did take a dip, and that dip was really impacted by 3rd grade math. Our 5th grade math, 5th grade across the board was the strongest grade. But 3rd grade, we had a lot of challenges, and some of those challenges were because of the exposure to technology and the comfort with technology. Our teachers did try really hard to give kids as much exposure in the classroom, but that extra exposure during library tech, I truly believe had a big impact because those kids had not used Chromebooks in 2nd grade. In K-2, we use iPads. So third grade was the first time kids are putting their hands on Chromebooks and having an opportunity to practice those skills. And as Jenny mentioned, the new program, Eureka Math Squared, there are online assessments that really mirror some of our MCAS style questions and use a lot of the same tools. So we are hoping that this new program, in addition to buffing up kids' math skills, it's also going to be able to give them the additional practice with the technology to help them do better on MCAS. And so the scores are what the scores are at this point, and we are hoping to see a much bigger improvement next year. And science was an area of strength for us. 64% of our students were meeting and exceeding, and for students with disability, 27% were meeting or exceeding, which was really exciting to see. And our growth in science for students with disabilities was the one area where we saw some good growth. And I should go back to say that we did have a number of students with disabilities who did have really good growth, but it was offset by some other students with disabilities who didn't have good growth. So when you put it all together, the overall scores aren't looking so great. So the plan moving forward, it went through very similar to what's happening at Bucher and at CKLA curriculum with fidelity and integrity. I had a discussion with my 3 through 5 teachers on Wednesday at one of our PLC meetings, and one of the topics that came up was that there's CKLA is mostly focused on nonfiction topics of science and social studies topics. There's not a lot of opportunity for true literature. And in each grade level, there's maybe one unit. In third grade, they do a literature study in the very first unit, and then it's not done again throughout the school year. So we've talked about how to go back to doing read-alouds, finding other opportunities for authentic literature. So we're looking really closely at the items that kids didn't do as well on and filling in some gaps that way. The new math curriculum has been fabulous so far. We are so excited by what we are seeing and the skills that kids are picking up on. Investigations was kind of a, we'll teach it to you and figure it out and use what strategy you're comfortable with. This new curriculum has explicit teaching, so we are teaching kids strategies. They're learning multiple strategies, but they are explicitly being taught. There's a spiral review of topics. Ben mentioned the daily fluency practice, and the teachers are really excited about that fluency practice. It's super engaging. All kids are participating. And then one of the big things that was a problem with in our math scores was the fractions, and fractions is taught much earlier in the year, and it's going to be repeated throughout. So we're hoping to see a big gain in our fraction scores. The other thing that we are doing is we are making sure that there is a balance between literacy and math during the intervention and enrichment block, and teachers are trying to even find times outside of the intervention and enrichment block to do intervention. If there are students who already get 4 literacy interventions during the week, well, when are they getting their math interventions? They're trying to find time first thing in the morning, or when there's a quiet 10 minutes just to be pulling kids and doing some additional work. And what the area that we're really seeing needing the most remediation is fact fluency, and kids who are in 4th grade who still don't know their addition facts. So in 3rd grade, they kind of learned multiplication, but they don't have their addition facts from 2nd grade. So we're trying to go back and fill some of those gaps. We are working with Julie Leneker, our literacy intervention specialist, to make sure that students are getting structured literacy interventions to supplement the LAC interventions. Teachers are also doing some intervention during their intervention blocks. So they might spend the first 20 minutes doing literacy intervention and then the second 20 minutes of the block doing math interventions. We are also putting a big emphasis on keyboarding and technology use, as I mentioned. We've got the 3rd graders already starting Typing Club. Typing Club didn't start until probably January or February last year, so we've already got the 3rd graders on their Chromebooks and keyboarding 3, 4, 5 times a week if we can get them. So we've got they're building their proficiency with being able to type their essays, and through the online assessments in Eureka Squared, Eureka Math Squared, they are learning how to use those equation editors in math and learning all of those tools that are very similar to what they'll see in MCAS. And then the other piece is that I've been working with our counselors and our teachers and the special ed teachers to really support and encourage student agency and reduce test anxiety. There were a couple of kids who we were really, really surprised at how poorly they had done, and then in talking to the teachers, we found out that they had kind of given up, like, this is just too hard and I just can't do it, and they didn't put the effort into even trying to read the questions. So we're going to really try to look at sort of whole child remediations this year to make sure that kids are feeling comfortable and it's okay, and you're going to try and do your best, because we had a number of students who just went through and had zeros on a lot of their questions. And when we went back and looked at it, it was kids who something had happened the week before, they weren't in the right frame of mind. So we're going to really try to think about that for this year. Any questions? Let me go back.
Thank you. Questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
You're missing the best part. That was terrible. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Zach Best, principal at the middle school. This is a great lead-in. I'm very proud to say that, our overview, I can tell you that we scored at the 95th percentile of all non-high schools in Massachusetts. Because schools in K through 8 are divided up any kind of number of ways, K6, K8, 5-8, they lump us all together. So we are in the 95th percentile there. To get there, we met or exceeded all of our improvement targets for all of our students and our lowest performing students. So they report on both of those, combine those two scores together to come up with our overall accountability piece. In fact, we exceeded our targets in all but 3 areas. So we met or exceeded all of our targets. We realized improvements in both growth and achievement in all tested subjects for all students and for students with disabilities. A little truth in advertising, we did see a bit of a decline in 6th grade ELA and math achievement, but we're outpacing state growth. So, we were talking earlier about how this, last year's 6th grade was compared to the previous year's 6th grade, which is fine, but, as a group of students, they are realizing growth at a greater rate than their peers at the state level. Additionally, the state gave us a title of School of Recognition. We're one of 57 schools to earn this. Importantly, we're one of 3 6 through 8 schools. And I think it's important to say that, this is a whole, you can be an elementary, middle, or high. It feels like it's especially tough for middle schools maybe to get this designation. So we're proud that we are one of 3. That designation is for demonstrating progress towards annual accountability targets. And there's an emphasis on not just the performance of all students, but in fact the students with in the lowest performing group. So that is what earned us that particular recognition. So we can look at our ELA overall, and you can see that we are trending in the right direction. Again, if you wanted to look at a specific grade level, 7th and 8th actually had double-digit gains. 6th grade, was a bit of a drop, but when you average it all together, we're still heading in the right direction. Our scaled score is 21 points over the state average. Our growth is 11 points over the state average. And then on the right, you can see our students with disabilities. That graph is a little bit more wavy. When you parse out the students with disabilities as a subgroup, there's fewer students. So, you can have a 2 or 3 student differential, and that can be realized with a broader wave that we're seeing over here. Again, outpacing state growth. Math, we have this similar story. On the left, we have an increase of 26% over the state average for all students. Not an increase, but our overall percentage students meeting or exceeding was 26% higher than the state average. Our scaled scores above the state average, and again, importantly, our growth is 10 points over the state average. We had a bit of a rough year a couple of years ago with our students with disabilities, and you can see that they are back on a growth trajectory. In middle school, we only test our 8th graders in science. They get tested in 5th grade. They don't see a science test until 8th grade, and that test actually covers all of the different 6th, 7th, and 8th grade materials. So because of that, we don't get a growth score in science. They don't feel like they have anything that's necessarily they can compare growth to. But again, you can see when compared to the state average, we're doing rather well, and we're heading in the right direction. You know, our students with disabilities are performing at the same level as all students statewide. So we like that trend, and we hope to see it continue. So what are we looking at moving forward? This year we were able to reduce class sizes in ELA math, science, and social studies. Anytime we can get that number down just a little bit, it allows us to give a little bit more attention to certain students, to all of the students, and we're realizing some advantage to having that reduction in class size. We've been chipping away at our IE block. This year we are in a place where every student in the building has access to additional help as needed twice a week in the IE block. We have regular data meetings this year. We have historically met with our math teachers and our ELA teachers following screeners, which is very helpful, and we can kind of get a snapshot of where they're at. We have expanded that practice to all subject areas, and not just when there's a screener. We're looking at unit tests. Today I met with 7th grade science. We were looking at CER activities. So really trying to get, rather than just a pinpoint here and there, and maybe at the end of the year, a more regular look at how students are doing so we can adjust instruction accordingly. And we're excited about a new ELA curriculum. We spent the whole year last year selecting a curriculum that we really felt met our needs. We have a fantastic ELA staff, but you can imagine, just if for nothing else, the resource gathering that goes into teaching a middle school English language arts class. But beyond that, this is really allowing us to use common language. So when we're teaching writing at 6th grade, the curriculum allows us to build on that in 7th grade and allows us to build on that in 8th grade. So we think those small things are going to make a big difference. I had a free panel over here, and I didn't like the blank space, and I thought, we've been looking at a lot of dots and dashes and lines, and this is a reminder for all of us that those dots and dashes and lines are people and children, and they're not widgets. Every day is a new day, and we know that there's so many factors that go into this. MCAS is just one representation, but it's a really good representation of the hard work our teachers and students are doing.
And I zoomed in, those posters are really pretty cool.
This is so, I know this is not on the docket, but this is one of my favorite activities. When they learn cells, they have to make a simile to something else. And so the kids will do to a sports arena. My office is the nucleus, and so it's fun to see what they come up with. This one is a candy factory. It's up to them to decide.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Be happy to answer any questions. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about MCAS at the high school. A couple of things I would like to point out, points of pride here. It's a strong overall MCAS performance compared to some area schools, which I can show you a little bit later. I think it's important to do that just to give you a little bit of context, how other schools are doing with respect to MCAS in the high school. We've seen continued improvement year over year of our students on IEPs, on ELA, so that's encouraging. But stepping a little bit beyond MCAS, MCAS is a part of the accountability structure in Massachusetts, and we scored in the 87th percentile amongst all high schools. And when you look at the all students group, we met or exceeded the targets for achievement and growth as set by the state. So those are positive things that I would like to point out. But some things that we need to continue to focus on would be a persistent gap between all students and students on IEPs, how they're performing on MCAS. But also looking at the lowest performing student group. They are identified as the kids who have really struggled on MCAS, both ELA and math. And we want to continue to focus on that because in this most recent year, we did note an actual decline in their performance on MCAS. And finally, although it's not reflected in the MCAS data here, we want to make sure that we are on top of our graduation rate, because year over year we do see some fluctuations. And being a smaller school, a couple of kids not graduating on time actually shows up. You know, and you think about the life trajectory for a student who doesn't graduate from high school with their peers. I think that it's important for us to keep that in mind. So what I'll show you first here is ELA. And you can see that 87% of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations. And I think that's something to be proud of, all the hard work that the teachers and the students put in. It's very commendable, but I also need to point out that this doesn't happen just because kids show up in the high school and take the ELA test in 10th grade. It's the work of their 10th grade teachers, their 9th grade teachers, 8th grade, 7th, all the way down to kindergarten. So if students have struggled on MCAS throughout the years, in some ways we can look at that as productive struggle. And by the time they get to the high school, I think that they get better at taking tests. That's part of it. They're a little bit better with the technology in their hands. But also they're just, I think, they're more empowered learners at that point, and they've really started to, I think, take ownership of what's going on in the classroom a little bit more. So I think that helps push the performance a little bit higher as well, just because they're older kids. But as I noted earlier, one of the areas of concern, if you look at the left-hand graph and the right-hand graph, you know, that gap between all students and students on IEPs. Although you can see that the last 3 years, or really the last 4 years of ELA testing for students on IEPs, you see a general trend line in the positive direction. We still need to work to narrow that gap. We want to see more of our students in special education meeting or exceeding expectations. And I think with more hard work in the classroom and designing experiences for those students, that we can help move them there. In math, 79% of all students are meeting or exceeding expectations, and we'll be able to contextualize that when we look at some other schools. And you can see, I think, a consistency of performance year over year, both with ELA and math, and that there's gonna be fluctuations from year to year. You can certainly see around COVID there is a dip there, and there are going to be ups and downs year over year, but I think we see a consistency of performance. But again, I would want to point out, again, that gap between the two groups there. And I'll talk a little bit more later about what we're doing to help narrow that gap. Science is a little weird in high school, I think, because students, first of all, take it in 9th grade, and 9th graders are very different than 10th graders, having worked with them for a number of years. Also, the science test in high school, it's about one subject, biology, and they kind of take the class, and it's not like ELA and math where they've had years to build those skills, and those are really skills-based tests. This is really a content-based test. I know they're trying to move it more towards a skills-based thing, which is good, I believe, but for right now, I think it's a lot of content, and so year over year, you may see some fluctuations in how kids do and just in terms of how they engage with the content or what the test looks like a little bit. Again, you see that gap between all students and students on IEPs. A little concerning, though, is sort of what seems like a downward trend, students on IEPs. One thing I would say is that last year we did adopt a new curriculum for our 9th grade biology classes, and it's not atypical to see a little bit of an implementation dip as both the teachers and the students get used to really a new way of learning, because this curriculum has pushed them to learn science in new ways and apply it in different ways as well. This is the local school comparison, because I think saying, 87% meet or exceed expectations, well, what does that actually mean in the real world? But what I did is I took all the Cape Ann League schools, but also Beverly, Danvers, and Masco, just because they're adjacent to us, to give us an idea of how do we perform relative to them. And you can see out of that group of 15, it was year over year, it's we're often near the top of that group of 15. There are some fluctuations there. We're like, well, how did you go from 7 to 1? It'd be really interesting to dig into that, I guess, and find that out. But, you know, the one-year things, I don't know if they're always helpful. It does help to look at trends maybe over 3 to 5 years or something like that. But it just gives you an idea of kind of where we sit. This is not a competition, but I think it gives us a little bit of context and how we can think about how our kids are doing. And the encouraging thing too is that on the left-hand side are all students, on the right-hand side, students with disabilities, and you know, in either case, we typically are performing near the top of this group of 15 schools. So what are our plans moving forward? You know, our plans are never specifically designed to do better on MCAS. Our plans are designed to help kids learn better. MCAS is a nice signal because it's aligned to state standards, but it's never the goal of what we're doing here. You know, what we want to continue to do in the high school, integrate executive functioning supports for our 9th graders. You might say, what does that have to do with MCAS or really kind of learning in general? But if kids don't have the skills to know how to operate as students and organize and plan and do all that other work, it's really hard for them to engage with the content on a sophisticated level. So as we help build those skills, we're able to give kids more sophisticated work and ask more of them. But it takes time, and we're working on that this year by having, you know, a really deliberate structure to the classes, making sure kids know what it is that they're expected to learn and how they're going to practice it outside of class. That's been helpful for students. We're identifying kids who are in need of support in ELA and math by using screeners at regular intervals. And then aligning them with the different supports that we have in school, one of which is the math support block. We have a teacher who is working with about 15 students during Power Block to both accelerate their learning in the class that they're in, but also to help fill in any skill gaps that they may have. And we place students in there partly because of the screening data that we have. And this year, you know, we're implementing Reveal Math, which is a new instructional resource for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 classes. And this helps give some consistency of experience to our students, but also takes the pressure off of teachers to have to go find all the things that you need for class, and instead focus more on how the kids are doing and how they're going to stitch those experiences together and have the kids interact with the content and with each other to accelerate their learning. But also, like I said, the new science curriculum. Last year was the first year with it, and the teachers made a nice move this year in terms of adopting their own workbook and creating that themselves. So that way it helps with some of those executive functioning supports that I referred to earlier on. We want to continue to develop, though, this year. Starting second semester, we will have a support block for ELA that will be in place. And you might say, well, why did you do it for math first and not for ELA? Math was the more glaring need. I think you saw the difference in meeting and exceeding expectations between ELA and math. But we will have an ELA support block starting second semester. We're also going to start using the ALEX platform, which is an online tool that students can use to help build their skills specifically in math. So we will be aligning that with the kids who we think need that the most early on, so we can build our skill with how to use that with kids. But it lets students really do a lot of independent practice, and it will show them how they're building their math skills over time. We're going to be using Study Island for MCAS prep, you know, again with a targeted group of kids because you know, it's still part of our accountability structure, so we want to make sure we're preparing kids for MCAS. Again, it's not really a target, but we do want to make sure that the kids who need the most help with that assessment are getting it. You know, we have ELA and math specific academic support classes for our students on IEPs. We need to continue to fine tune those a little bit. That's a newer thing this year, where if a student has a disability, maybe in written expression or in reading, or has a math goal, they're in an academic support that's specific for that. We just need to continue to tune that model to make sure we get, first of all, get the right kids in the right spot. High school scheduling is kind of complex, and it's not always easy to get kids in the exact right spots. So we'll work on that, but also giving the teachers the tools they need to give kids the proper support in both the ELA and math-specific support or academic support blocks. And finally, we've taken extra steps this year so far, and we're going to continue to do so. But to monitor all the student indicators that we have that really relate towards graduation. So yes, that is how kids are doing grade-wise, but also looking at some behavioral data and attendance to make sure that we're catching kids who may be putting forward some early warning signs, we'll say, and making sure that they're getting the extra support that they need. I mean, typically our kids graduate from high school, but every once in a while you get a year where it's just, for whatever reason, it's tough, and we want to make sure that we hold on to these kids and get them to walk across the stage with their classmates. So that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Question? This isn't really a question, but I just want to say thank you for articulating something that when I reviewed this before, I tried to say to Eric, and I really spent forever trying to articulate, and you said it so nicely, and I'm so glad that you said it here, which was when you talked about when we're looking at the high school scores, that's really reflective of our kindergarten all the way through that. And I love that you use the word that it's a productive struggle, right? Because in between times, even I think a couple of the elementary teachers, principals talked about even the timing of, like, if you learn fractions later in the year, it's not reflected in the test. But I don't want, this is my judgment, but, like, is it really important in the long run? Because ultimately what we're seeing is the fruits of all that work. And I just want to say that thank you for articulating that, and like seeing that it builds up and that it may not be reflected earlier on, but it is showing up in later on.
They do grow up.
Yeah.
That's the good part.
So thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Give you a quick PSA, because I'm sure people are wondering. Didn't we just vote the MCAS out? The reality is, question 2 was, yes, we did vote yes in Massachusetts, but that just means that the test will not be a graduation requirement for next year. What we've learned so far is the state continues to use MCAS in all the same grades as an accountability measure. So one of the things that we get each year is an accountability report, a score report by building, and that has MCAS scores and attendance, and it compares growth and achievement across different groups of students, and that will still remain in place. So they'll be still giving the MCAS test. There's just not a requirement for to pass, if you will, to meet or exceed to graduate. What we've been told is they're going to lean back on something we've kind of done in the past. If you had a student who didn't pass, for example, the math test in high school at 10th grade, they did not, for some reason, they did not meet the expectations. They weren't proficient, if you will. Then they went on what's called an EPP plan, an education proficiency plan, and that enabled the child to move forward. Take, for example, their Algebra 2 class. If they got a passing grade in their Algebra 2 class, then they were able to graduate. That was one of the things. So what are the early indicators from the Department of Education, and a notice they sent out actually yesterday morning, was related to how they intended to do that. So it looks like they're going to allow each district to come up with those requirements. They just haven't actually labeled them yet for us. I'm sure they'll give us more guidance as we move forward, but there's currently a whole group of kids that will still be taking retests in November. The earliest, the kind of no test feature for graduation kicks in is December. So anybody who's already passed it, you're all set. Anybody who hasn't, we're waiting for some direction from the state. So.
Questions on that?
I want to thank all the principals. This is tough digging into this information. We go through it from multiple angles. We push and shove over what makes sense to present and what doesn't. We're trying to be transparent. We want to be honest about what's going on out there. We have noticed some really good growth, again, in the middle school. Congratulations to Zach and his staff, School of Recognition. But as Brian said, it's literally all of us. They're stepping all the way through, and they're gaining a little bit, gaining a little bit, gaining a little bit, and you see the fruits of their labor on graduation day, when just about every single kid in every single class gets their diploma and moves on into the wide world. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you. I think this is our second meeting in a row. You all got to be here late night, so thank you very much.
Come back. I'm trying to say no.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Eric, it's back to you.
Switching gears here. Okay. Excuse me. The next order of business is our invitation into the accelerated repair program for the high school roof. Did not think this was going to happen this year. We thought we may have to wait another year, but we were invited in to the program to partner with the MSBA. And essentially, similar to the building project, the MSBA will commit to a percentage of grant money towards the replacement of the high school roof. There is a really specific process to follow. So this is not a guarantee. This is really us working with the MSBA to explore the project and then to gain approval through the next, January through April, a 4-month process to try to gain approval to be invited into the actual program, which will signal that they'll pay. There is similar steps to the accelerated repair program as we have done with the building program. You have to have a project manager, you have to have a designer, you work, they basically get assigned from the state, so it's a little bit different in the fact that they assign them to school districts, which I think is a money savings feature when you're working on a project that's somewhere between maybe $3 and $5 million. So that they're really trying to just hone in on getting the project set up and moving forward. So this will, if we decide this would make sense, working with the MSBA, we'll go through the first steps of the process, and then we'll have to make a decision to go forward. We could also say, we don't want to move forward right now because we have enough projects on the docket. But I just wanted people to be aware that we were invited into the program. We don't have to do anything yet. The kickoff date is January 2nd. And essentially, just like the school building program, the accelerated repair program, the first few steps are paperwork, getting in certain paperwork, checking the boxes, if you will. So we have a commencement date of January 2nd, 2025. We'll work with them to do the kind of the prep work, if you will, and then we'll have to make a determination with the committee at that point in time to move forward or not.
All right, questions? No? No, okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I guess I don't have any questions, other than what are the next steps? This is just sort of an FYI. When would the work happen? Do we know that? Or is it too early?
The work from our perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. They do a compliance certification, which just means that we're willing to comply. I don't know if you remember, we had a big, thick packet that we had to sign for the building project. So you do that first, and then you go through your maintenance and capital planning. What does that look like in perspective with all the other things that may be kind of online for us to do? And then we have to just follow the process to gain funding for the schematic design process, which means also figuring out what that might cost us. Yeah. Something right now we're doing feasibility and schematic design for a $150 million elementary school at the rate of $1.2 million. So certainly much, much less. And that may be something we look at funding through our own budget or going to the towns to do. So those steps are the interim steps. And then at some point we'd have to get authorization to move forward from the committee. And then if we do move forward, we'll have to get authorization for bond funds in order to pay for the project itself.
Is the reimbursement the same rate as the other project?
Don't know yet. That's part of that first 4-month process. They'll work with us to figure out, okay, what is the OPM going to cost? What is the designer going to cost? What is schematic design going to cost?
So that's project specific.
So it's very specific to the project, yeah. They walked our roof with us. We were on the roof. Curtis Whiteman, our Director of Facilities Maintenance Operations, he and I walked the roof with members of the MSBA, so they have an idea of what we have, what we need, what kind of issues are up on that roof, which was helpful to get us in the program as well, so.
Okay. I know the roof is really leaky.
Yeah.
It's very leaky.
Yeah.
Very.
And has been for a long
time, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing helping us right now, unfortunately, is the drought, but it's still, once we hit the winter season, it gets really bad.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have the school committee protocols. The only change that has been made to the document that you've been seeing every time we have a meeting is the date at the top. So this document is the same school committee protocols that we read a portion of at the top of every meeting. So I think members are very familiar with these protocols. I did put out an email and didn't receive any feedback from anyone on the committee. That doesn't mean you can't speak now. So can we, David, would you be willing to start us off with a motion?
Sure. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee vote to approve the 2024-2025 School Committee Superintendent Protocols as presented in the agenda.
Second.
Second by Amy Kumberger. Does anyone have any discussion about any of the protocols, anything that you want to?
No?
Okay. Seeing none, it looks like we are ready to vote. Maybe I should just say before, this is a document that actually everyone signs, so I don't know if that makes anyone want to, okay. All right, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 4 members present, and the motion passes. And if everyone is willing at the end of the meeting, if you could just sign this document. Thank you. And I guess I've asked before, but I would appreciate continued feedback about whether it's helpful or not to continue with the practice of reading them at the top of the meeting in portions. I'm open to feedback if anyone has it now, or if you ever want to. It's certainly not a law or a requirement. It's just something we've done traditionally. So. Okay. Moving on and kind of winding down here. We don't have anything on finance and operations. Capital finance.
The meeting was canceled.
Okay, thank you. Are you rescheduling? Do you have a reschedule?
There's another meeting
The 12th, I think?
the next week, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Tuesday, the 12th.
Okay. Policy?
Our last meeting was also canceled, and
Yes.
we're waiting to reschedule.
Okay. All right. Yes, and as you know, you can have all those conversations on email about rescheduling.
Yes.
That's fine. Negotiations, we have nothing new to report right now. I don't know if we have a secretary report.
I haven't pulled one in a while.
Okay. Would you be willing to do that next time?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you. And back to you, Eric.
All right, thank you. A couple of quick things. We are very excited for the upcoming high school musical. It is the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Should be exciting. If you haven't seen me on social media wearing my bee glasses, I should have wore them tonight. First show will be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the high school, and then there are 2 more shows on Saturday, one at 2 p.m., one at 7 p.m. If you have not been to a high school musical, I encourage you to go. They will blow your mind. I having been to many through the years, it's always amazing to see the talents kids have and the way they grow through the system. You know, you see them in plays at the elementary school and the plays at the middle school, and then you see them at a high school and they kind of burst out, and super exciting. And it's a quick, 2 hours of the day to come and see what our kids do, and it's really a good culmination of everything along the way. As Brian tried to say, this is another way we can look at how our kids are doing in school, and they can put together these amazing musicals and plays. And it's not just the kids on the stage, it's the kids backstage too that are manning the sound and the lights and the curtains and the movement of stage and all those things too. So lots of opportunities for our kids to get involved, and we look forward to the culminating experience this weekend. We are recruiting members of the Wellness Committee. You can reach out to me or the middle school nurse, Mary Beth Ting. They meet 4 times a year, really establishing goals, reviewing policies, and then managing anything that may come from the state. And then they review our guidelines annually to be updated. So they are looking for members from the community. They have student and staff members, so they're looking for some outside members. I think we also need a school committee liaison for that as well.
We've had that in the past,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
okay.
Their next meeting is on the 14th, which is next Thursday, I believe. They do a 7 to 8 meeting at the Miles River Middle School. And then I talked a little bit about ballot question 2, so I don't think I need to go back to that, but the test is gone, but the graduation requirement is gone, but the test remains. So we are, in the words of the state, guidance on certification will be forthcoming. That is the note I got from them yesterday, so, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have questions for the superintendent? All right, I really don't have much on the chair's report. The only couple things I just wanted to say, Amy and I did go to the Friends of Winthrop meeting on Monday, and to share information and to answer questions regarding the elementary school building project. And they were a great group. They had some good, thoughtful questions, and it was a good conversation. And I just pulled up the sign-up sheet that Amy has created, and you have in your box. I see these are not necessary. Each one will come up, and we'll have to address whether it's, these are, we haven't, each one as it comes up, I know Amy just made these sort of as events that are in the district, and so not every single one of them, but I do see David Polito has, thank you, signed up for some of those in December. So it's nice.
Be there anyway, so.
Huh?
But I'll be there anyway.
Yeah, and it's depending on the event, I felt like, I don't want to speak for Amy, but it was nice. It's nice to have 2 people there, just in terms of answering questions, but also just in connecting with different people. It's kind of nice to have different, so definitely check out the list, see if anything works with you, your schedule.
I actually got an update, the Color's not holding the ski and skate
Yes.
sales. We can.
Yes. So,
Can we go backwards?
you want to go backwards?
Yeah.
Sure.
I forgot one thing.
All right, well, I'm done, unless anyone has any questions for me.
Sorry.
All right, yes, go ahead.
All right, so this is a little bit lengthy. I think that's why I forgot it, because I didn't put it on my regular notes. I just wanted to comment on our fall athletic seasons. As you know, our kids are playing kind of all over the place and have been extremely successful. Hamilton Wenham girls soccer team, they are the Cal champs again, 15-0-4. They are in the first round of the tournament, and they'll start, I think Saturday is their first game at Gordon College. Boys soccer, they are also in the tournament. They have 12-5-2. They're in the first round, also coming up tomorrow at 4. They will be at Memorial Stadium, and it's actually in East Boston. Volleyball went 8-12. They defeated Sturgis Charter School in the first round of the tournament. So congratulations to our volleyball team. They are playing again. They played last night, and they did not advance. Ipswich has moved forward out of that match. Football has drawn Lowell Catholic in their Week 9 game, and that'll be played in Neshoba Valley Technical High School.
They're there right now.
So they're already there playing. It's weird for football. They do a playoff type of a setup, and suddenly you're playing in weird places against teams you've never played before. So it's interesting at the same time for the kids. Field hockey, they were 7-9-2. They fell in the first round of the tournament to St. John Paul II school. So they had a good, strong season, so we congratulate all of them. Girls soccer, 5th consecutive Cal title. Georgia Wilson named the most valuable player. Nancy Waddell, again, named Coach of the Year. Girls and boys cross country teams, the boys won their 3rd consecutive Cal title, while the girls team took the top spot for the 19th time in 20 years, which is amazing. And then both teams took first place this past weekend at the Cal Open at the Rentham Development Center. And Grace Rich came in first place in the girls' meet. And then I think that's it. We have golf team capturing this second. I almost forgot the golf team. For capturing their second Cape Ann title championship in the last 3 years. They qualified the state tournament and finished 4th in the sectionals. Senior Cooper Miller was named the Baker Division Player of the Year. So lots of exciting news on the sports front for our kids, and we look forward to the continuation of teams that are still going in the tournament, and go Generals.
Right. Thank you. Go Generals. All right. Topics for future meetings? Okay.
We all budget all the time.
All budget. Okay. Unless anyone has anything else, I would be ready for a motion.
I move to adjourn at 8:42.
Second.
Second by Amy Kumberger. Is there any discussion? Nope. All right. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. It is unanimous.